All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the deeply complex and honestly tragic loss of an absolute 90s and 2000s cultural icon, Michelle Trachtenberg. We're going to look at the stark tension between the official medical facts of her passing and the recent, highly publicized claims made by a former co-star. Really, this is a story about what happens when public memory, private grief, and media narratives crash into each other.
Now, to really grasp the weight of all this, we got to remember Michelle's massive cultural footprint. I mean, from Pete and Pete to Harriet the Spy, Buffy, Gossip Girl, she was a total fixture on our screens. Her Gossip Girl co-star Blake Lively really hit the nail on the head, calling her electricity and saying that everything she did 200%. So when news broke that Michelle had passed away at just 39 years old, the absolute shock that ripped through her fan base and the industry was profound.
Section 1. A tragic loss. Establishing the timeline.
So before we get into any of the media debates that popped up later, it's absolutely crucial we ground ourselves in the actual timeline here. Late 2024, reports come out that Michelle underwent a liver transplant. Fast forward a few months to the morning of February 26, 2025. She was tragically found unconscious in her New York City apartment by her mother and passed away. By April 2025, the medical examiner's report is released, but then over a whole year later, July 16, 2026, this massive media controversy blows up when Rosie O'Donnell gives a super candid interview to Variety.
Section 2. The official cause. The medical examiner's report.
Whenever we're looking at conflicting stories, best practice is always to start with the hard clinical data. The medical examiner officially determined Michelle's cause of death was complications of diabetes mellitus. To put it simply, according to the Mayo Clinic, that's a group of diseases affecting how your body uses blood sugar. It is really important to note here that Michelle's family explicitly opted out of a full autopsy. They wanted privacy, totally understandably, so the examiner relied on thorough toxicology and lab tests instead to reach that official conclusion.
Okay. So the main takeaway here is that these are the undisputed facts on record. She was 39, found in her apartment, had a recent liver transplant, and passed from diabetes complications. There is literally no mention of substance abuse on the official medical record. The clinical narrative is totally straightforward: a tragic failure of health linked to a chronic disease and a major surgery.
Section 3. Rosie O'Donnell's startling claims. The July 2026 Variety interview.
And that brings us to the big complication in this story. In July 2026, Rosie O'Donnell, who, remember, starred with Michelle way back in the 1996 hit Harriet the Spy, did this interview where her claims sharply contrast with the medical record. It's a night and day difference. On one side, we have the official findings: diabetes, liver transplant. On the other side, Rosie O'Donnell claiming she believed Michelle got into drugs and alcohol and saying she was in pretty bad shape those last few years. She even claimed she'd spoken to Michelle's mom about it. Obviously a massive divergence from the public reality.
To back this up, Rosie's sharing a really specific anecdote. She described how Michelle had basically become inaccessible and disoriented toward the end. Rosie talked about planning meetups. She said she even had meals totally prepped at her house, only for Michelle to completely forget they even had plans. Rosie painted this picture of a friend who was struggling deeply, calling the whole thing a real tragedy.
Section 4. The Whitney Houston comparison. Echoes of past tragedies.
To really drive her point home, Rosie made a pretty heavy comparison between Michelle and music legend Whitney Houston. Rosie recalled a time Whitney didn't show up for a live interview on her 90s talk show, and Rosie claimed she told Whitney's team right then and there, "This is her legacy, and if she dies, it's on your watch." By bringing this up, Rosie was basically drawing a parallel. She was suggesting that in cases of celebrity addiction, enablers and employees often just stay silent to protect their paychecks, leaving the star completely isolated.
Section 5. Public backlash and privacy. The ethical debate. Well, almost the second that Variety interview dropped, the public discourse shifted hard. It brings us to this huge central question. Was it Rosie's place to speak out at all? It perfectly highlights that intense tension between what a friend might see as an important truth and a grieving family's right to absolute privacy.
Let's look at the pushback. Fans and online commentators went off, labeling Rosie's remarks disingenuous and tasteless. They quickly pointed out that the family clearly wanted privacy. They literally declined an autopsy to keep things private. Plus, medical experts and fans were quick to remind everyone that a liver transplant can happen for a ton of medical reasons, not just substance abuse.
And honestly, the biggest point for a lot of people was that there was absolutely zero public history of addiction from Michelle or her family before this interview. For many, Rosie was just violating boundaries and turning a private medical issue into a public spectacle.
Adding another layer to this, fans started pulling up Michelle's own explicit words. Back in 2010, in an interview with Complex magazine, Michelle stated point blank, "I'm drug dumb. I just don't do that because I would never do anything to, God forbid, ruin my career." Now, sure, 15 years is a long time and things can change, but it really highlights how fiercely she valued her professionalism and worked to keep her public image clean her whole life.
So, I'm going to leave you with a final provocative thought about the ethics of all this. Where exactly do we draw the line between a friend's public grief and a mourning family's right to privacy? Is there actually a societal value in these posthumous revelations as some kind of cautionary tale? Or is it just a straight-up invasion of privacy once the medical record is closed? It is a really tough question about how we consume the lives and the deaths of the people we watch on screen.
But ultimately, beyond the dueling narratives and all the media scandal, at the center of this was a human being who was deeply, deeply loved. So we're going to wrap up this explainer by honoring her memory with this gorgeous tribute from her Buffy castmate, Sarah Michelle Gellar. "I will be brave, I will live for you." It's just a really powerful reminder of the lasting impact Michelle Trachtenberg left on her peers and on all of us. Thanks for diving into this one with me.